So, does the supernatural exist? It's a question that has been debated for centuries. Are there forces and phenomena beyond what science can explain?
It's a tough one, right? I mean, on one hand, science strives to understand everything. If something exists, shouldn't it be, by definition, part of the natural world?
That's the crux of it, isn't it? If goats are real, shouldn't they emit some kind of detectable energy? If telepathy exists, shouldn't we be able to measure brain activity that shows information transfer?
Exactly. The scientific method is all about understanding the phenomena found in nature and the laws that govern them. But what if something lies outside those laws?
Well, some argue that supernatural simply means something science hasn't explained yet, like dark matter, for instance. We know it's there because of its gravitational effects, but we don't know what it is.
Right. So is dark matter supernatural? Most people wouldn't call it that, even though it's still a mystery to science. It's more like an unproven hypothesis than something inherently beyond our understanding.
But what if supernatural means something science cannot investigate, even in principle? Something permanently beyond the reach of our instruments and methods?
Then I'd argue it probably doesn't exist. I mean, if something exists, it is natural, and science can at least try to study it. The tools might not be there yet.
Like gravitational waves, Einstein predicted them, but it took a century to develop the technology to actually detect them.
Or atoms. People were talking about them in ancient Greece, but it took over 2 millennia before we had solid proof they were real.
So it's a matter of being patient, right? Of pushing the boundaries of science to see what's possible. But how do you approach something that, by its very definition, defies natural laws?
That's where it gets tricky. Some argue that the concept of the supernatural is inherently linked to the idea of a higher power.
Okay, how so?
Well, they might say that the universe is either finite or infinite. If it's finite, what caused it? If it's infinite, how can something infinite even exist? Either way, they see it as pointing to something beyond the natural.
So the existence of the universe itself is, in a way, a supernatural phenomenon because it can't be fully explained by science?
That's the argument. If the universe is finite, then something infinite must have started it. A first cause that's independent of any other cause.
And that first cause, they'd say, is God.
It could be. Or some other infinite entity we can't comprehend. That's where faith comes in.
So science can take us to the edge of the known, but faith is what fills in the gaps.
For some people, yes. They see science and faith as complementary, not contradictory. Science explains the natural world, and faith explains the supernatural.
But others would say that relying on the supernatural is a cop-out, that it's a way of avoiding the hard work of scientific inquiry.
It really depends on your perspective, but let's look at other perspectives. Some argue that the very idea of the supernatural is irrational, that it requires believing in something that goes against all logic and evidence.
So believing in the supernatural is like committing rational suicide, as some might say?
Potentially, yes. They argue that it's more rational to believe in a magic infinite thing than to believe that the universe came from nothing without a cause.
Okay, but what about personal experiences? What about people who claim to have seen ghosts, had near-death experiences, or experience other paranormal phenomena?
That's where it gets even more complicated. I mean, how do you verify those experiences? How do you know they're not just misinterpretations of natural phenomena or tricks of the mind?
Right, and that's what many skeptics argue, that what appears to be paranormal is usually just a misunderstanding or anomalous variation of something natural.
But then you have parapsychologists who try to study these phenomena scientifically. They use experimental methods to test for things like ESP and telekinesis.
And what have they found? Any conclusive evidence?
The results have been mixed, to say the least. Some studies have shown statistically significant results, but they're often difficult to replicate and subject to methodological criticisms.
So the jury's still out on whether these phenomena are real?
Absolutely. And even if they are real, that doesn't necessarily mean they're supernatural. It could just mean we don't understand the underlying mechanisms yet.
So if we did prove that ghosts were real, they'd automatically become part of the natural world? They'd no longer be supernatural?
That's the paradox, isn't it? The moment something is proven to exist, it ceases to be supernatural. It becomes a natural phenomenon that can be studied and understood.
So maybe the real question isn't whether the supernatural exists, but what we mean by supernatural.
Exactly. If it just means something science hasn't explained yet, then sure, the supernatural exists. But if it means something science can explain, even in principle, then the answer is probably no.
Interesting. So it all boils down to definition. If we define the supernatural as a phenomenon that exists, but current science is not able to explain it, then it exists. On the other hand, if the definition of supernatural is a phenomenon that exists, but science is unable to investigate it, even in principle, then it does not exist.
Well said. At the end of the day, belief in the supernatural often comes down to faith, personal experience, and philosophical assumptions. Science can only take us so far. The rest is up to us.
To learn more, check out the listed sources below.